All right, everyone, we're live. Thrilled to have Dee Garzon from President-elect at NARPM, as well as Pure Property Management on the show today. I've been had a chance to catch up with Dee through Greg Frank, through Peter Lohman, and learn a little bit about you and the things that you're doing. Thrilled to hear a bit of the stories of what you've been talking about for NARPM 2.0. I think it's so exciting with all the changes being driven in the market today, and especially with the industry. And then ultimately about your success in your life. I mean, I think that going through your bio and preparing for the call today, just couldn't get more excited to have the conversation around what you've been able to do throughout your transition and moving throughout the different stages of your career. So I can't wait to share those stories, or for you to share those stories with everybody today. Everyone, for getting to hell yes. So today's gonna be a little bit different because we've got Dee on from President-elect at NARPM. So we're gonna talk a little bit about kind of two halves of Dee's career. So let's speak a little bit initially about your property management, growing that company, starting that first set, or even AT&T, getting into your first kind of like chapter with Skyline, moving to Pure, and then ultimately moving into your role at NARPM. And then I really want to make sure we dedicate some time to the future of NARPM, single family. Why is it so important from a housing perspective and an affordability perspective for this industry to thrive, and the work that you're going to do with that? So along the way, you can probably catch the threads. There's tons of getting to hell yes moments all along the way. And that's what's really exciting about the conversation with you, Dee, and the things that you've done in your life and the things that you're going to do, especially for the industry during your term as president-elect. This again, as always, everyone, this is brought to you by IRCX. IRCX is remote maintenance software and inspection software for property management, helping speed up maintenance, helping speed up inspections. If you have any questions about that, of course, always DM me and shoot me a link. And as we always kick the show off, if you are listening to the show, please please add any comments. We'll respond to those in real time and kind of adjudicate those as they fit the conversation. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple on the podcast, just hit like and subscribe. Makes it easier to find. So with that intro of the incredible Dee Garzon, really appreciate you coming on today. We always kick things off a little bit about yourself to get things rolling, and then we'll transition into the problem that you're solving. And specifically, we'll kind of start with the problem that you're solving from a NARPM perspective, and we'll back into your bio and work our way through the rest of your journey to share all your accomplishments along the way. So we'll kick those things off first with a bit about yourself, and then what's the problem you're solving for NARPM?
Awesome. Thank you so much for that great intro, Guillermo. Thank you so much. This is a great timing because we just got back from Orlando. The NARPM National Convention just took place, and I was installed as next year's president along with the board of directors for 2026. And before the convention, I had a lot of time to reflect, right? To get ready for my installation speech, of course, to get ready for my role. And you posed a great question to start is, what problem are we solving for the industry? NARPM is the, association, right, when it comes to single family rental property managers. So we represent that space. And the problem with that space right now, in addition to affordability, housing affordability, lack of inventory problem, there's also the problem of the perception of landlord versus tenants or residents, right? It's always like one against the other. So to me, that's a problem that we can solve as property managers, because property managers, we're in the middle, right? We represent both sides. We represent the owners, the landlords. We understand their challenges, their goals. And then also at the same time, we are representing the residents that we serve. We're here to protect their rights. We're here to make sure that they have a safe, accommodations to live in. And sometimes we are caught in the middle and fighting, right? To make sure that we bring the best and most fair solution. So that is a problem that we hope to teach and educate the public in that we can work together, right? Landlords, owners, and residents can work together to bring better experiences for everyone. And it starts with the property managers on educating our clients, for example, right? maintenance. It's great because you are in that industry, you're in that business. Maintenance is the number one thing that we deal with as property managers. And it really starts with us educating our clients on why preventative maintenance is so important. And also being quick to maintain and repair your property leads to happier residents and residents that will renew, which then leads to, better retention and better return on investment for our clients. So it really, it's so important for property managers. We're really in the education business. So we want our members, for the NARPM members, to really not just understand and grasp that concept, but to champion it, right? And in their conversations with their clients, with our residents, that's where we want to go. So we really want to bridge that gap between landlords and tenants.
Why do you think, and we'll kind of move on into your story in a second here, but why do you think that exists? What's the sensationalization of this friction that makes it so attractive for people to kind of like, and I'll leave it there. Why is it so sensational from a news story?
Yeah. Well, not to blame everything on media, but sometimes the media just wants to share bad news because it is sensational, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier to shed light, to put the spotlight on a landlord who doesn't understand the law, and then they do something stupid, right? And it gets them in trouble with the law. That's always a better story than the landlord who cares about their home and they, they send in monthly or quarterly maintenance to take care of the needs before it even arises. That's boring and nobody wants to report that.
Yeah.
So, and unfortunately there are the self, managed landlords, right? The do-it-yourselfers, who unfortunately they see that immediate need to make money or to have cash flow over a long-term investment strategy. And sometimes those are the people that get in trouble and they don't take the time to learn about the laws and the regulations, which in this industry were very heavily regulated, right? We've got the Real Estate Commission, we have fair housing, we have our local rules and regulations that we had to adhere to, and every state has their own laws. So it really, because of the regulations, that's another reason why it's so important for property managers and landlords to find an organization like NARPM to get educated, right? Get educated so that you don't show up on the news one day.
Yeah, well, and for scope and scale, I think my last data point was 14 million. Is that about right? SFRs in the U.S. right now.
Yes.
And I think it's safe to say that of that percentage, a big percentage of those people may not have had access to that kind of housing otherwise. And so the what's lost in the news sound bites and the sensationalism of maybe one bad actor is that there's 14 million people that are living in a home that they may not be able to have otherwise had that access to it. And the access might have been just either legal, whatever, for all different sorts of reasons, but that access may not have existed had not somebody, be it institutional or be it a single operator or independent operator, put the money forward, paid for a down payment, funded the maintenance, funded all these things, so that then in exchange for rent. And so I think that what's lost in the sensationalism of all this, and why it's so important to move towards NARPM 2.0, right, is being a passenger in this conversation isn't very comfortable to have someone else managing your story. And this is what's thrilling about what you've been chatting about lately in your NARPM conversation in Orlando, is around how can we begin to convert this story from a receiver of what someone else is choosing versus owning our own message.
Yeah,
that's a thrilling change before us. So before we kind of get into that, let's talk about your background. I love hearing about anyone's first job and coming out of where they get started, because that usually often builds a foundation of awareness and understanding terms of what they're going to do. Now, you started at AT&T. What was that like?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I always say there's no, mistakes made in your past. Everything that you do kind of leads to the next thing, and eventually leading you to what you were meant to do, right? So I went to Georgia Tech for college, and I got my degree in computer science, which had nothing to do with property management. In my first year of college, I knew that I did not want to do anything with computers or coding or programming. What appealed to me was like the logical reasoning side of it, but not the programming side. So I asked my parents at the time, like, hey, can I switch my major? Maybe I actually wanted to do building construction, believe it or not. And they said, no, you know what? We've only budgeted to pay for 4 years of college. You're going to finish your 4 years of college as a computer science major. And after that, you can do whatever you want. So I eventually graduated in computer science from Georgia Tech, and I specialized in network, right? Data networks. Yeah. And so my first job coming out. Like
network topology, Metcalfe's law, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Yes. AT&T picked me up, not to help them design their data networks, okay, not to like hardwire things, but to sell. And I took that. I just took that opportunity. I was so super excited about it. AT&T actually has one of the best national training centers programs.
Yeah.
So they put me through a 6-week intensive sales training program. It was like my first time cold calling, my first time learning how to get through sales objections. And I just remember having so much fun doing that. And then the first year, of course, they put you in the boiler room for those in sales. That's a very common term, right? Terminology. So they put us in the boiler room. And my first year, kind of getting my feet wet in sales, I won this big sales award out of the entire training center. And they sent me to Utah to go skiing. So it was
your first President's Club.
Yeah, it was. It was my first yes moment, like I feel like I found my calling was in sales. And so that led me to become an account executive with AT&T, where I manage medium to small businesses and helping them, consulting them on their networking needs. Like, what kind of phone lines do you need? What kind of internet lines do you need from a business perspective? So that job was great. It taught me about sales. And also during that job, I met some people, my coworkers, who were also real estate investors, and that's where I learned about real estate investing. And they taught me the concept of, hey, you can actually own rental homes, have someone else pay off your mortgage as renters, and eventually you can retire on it. And that concept grabbed my attention. And this or right around the time that Rich Dad Poor Dad became super popular.
Right.
So I went, got that book. My dad bought the Carlton Sheets series for me. And, it was like books on tape. So I into that. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. And when I was 23, I used my savings to buy my first 2 rental properties in the first year. And, if you're a parent listening and you've got young kids, I will say that one of the best things my parents did for me was allowing me to live at home for the first year that I started working, which allowed me to save up all of my income, right? And I was able to use that income to purchase my rental properties. And I was like, man, 2 properties a year is it's too slow. How do I do this faster? Yeah. So the very next year, I partnered up with 2 more coworkers, and we went out and bought 10 more properties. So I was sitting at 12 properties my second year doing this as a real estate investor. The 3 of us
all in Atlanta?
All in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Yes. And then the 3 of us split up our responsibilities, and I got the property manager role.
Okay.
As a partner. And that's how I got my feet wet. And that's how I learned, The good thing is I learned on my own portfolio. I didn't learn my lessons from, someone else's property. So I made all the mistakes, like, what not to do when it comes to rent collection, maintenance, lease agreements. Like, I think I made all the mistakes you could possibly make as a real estate investor, like your self-managed landlord, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, yeah. And then I in 20, after the recession, it was 2010, I saw an opportunity in property management. I saw that it was an industry that was growing rapidly because people couldn't sell their properties anymore. And then more people are becoming tenants because they couldn't afford to buy, and their credits, shot because of foreclosures and whatnot at the time. And so I was like, you know what? Property management is like the industry that's going to blow up. And I went to my broker at the time. I had my real estate license. And I said, hey, if you would allow it, I will run your property management division and I will grow it and we can split the profits. And she turned me down because this is a very litigious industry, right? And she's like, that's too much liability for my brokerage. I'm not interested. So
does she had properties to manage?
She's a real estate broker in sales.
Okay, but so my question is, so she had, what was the problem that she was seeking to solve? Like, did she have properties needed management?
No, she held my license.
Oh, got you. Okay,
yeah.
Gotcha.
I purchased properties using my own real estate license under her brokerage.
I understand.
Yeah. Yes. And she was okay with me managing my own properties. We did that. She wasn't involved in that. And then in Georgia, you just had to disclose it to your broker and, give them the escrow account numbers. So we did all that. And then, so, one door was shut, right? She told me no, but I was like, you know what? It's okay. I will just go get my own broker license and start my own firm, because I already had a company set up to manage my own properties. All I had to do is get my broker license and put that license with that company.
Right.
That's what I did. And then in 2010, after I got my broker license, got my firm set up, I started taking on third-party management. And so that's how I got into it.
And you guys grew up to about 500 units, you said?
Yes.
I heard you? Yeah.
I got to 500 units in single-family rentals, which included built-to-rent. We ended up managing a few built-to-rent communities. And then I also had a HOA division and then a short-term rental division.
Gotcha.
So that was the entirety of that business.
Now, before we transition to Pure, now with your comp sci background, presumably you were doing this with paper and notepads.
I was, spreadsheets.
Spreadsheets?
Yes. Yeah.
But were you starting to think about automation? I mean, just like with your background, were you trying to think about how this can be easier and faster?
Yeah. So it wasn't until I got to about 50, 60 doors that I was feeling the workload and, just the manual tasks, right? Because property management is extremely heavily task oriented and process driven business. I was like, man, there's got to be a better way to do this. I don't know how people get to, thousands of doors doing it this way. Yeah. So I started doing research and I found Buildium, right? I found property management software. And then I found a class online taught by Robert Locke. It was called Property Management 101. And I said, okay, I've never taken a class, believe it or not, managing 50 to 60 properties, never taken a class. Just kind of did it based on my own experience as a real estate investor. And I was like, all right, I'm going to take this class and see what I can learn. And sitting in that class, I was like, I'm doing so many things wrong. I'm either going to lose my license, get fined, or go to jail. It was going to be one of those, right?
Yeah.
So I, at the end of the class, Robert Locke, the instructor, said, if you want to be successful in property management, you need to join NARPM, right? Yeah. So I did it immediately, and that was a critical turning point in my career. And through NARPM was when I found different technology, different softwares, automation. And honestly, at that time when I joined in 2012, we didn't have as many vendors as we do nowadays. We didn't
Right.
have, right, a lot of, like, never even heard of remote professionals. We never heard of, when we didn't have all of these different companies now like yourself, who allow us to outsource pieces of our process. So I always say, like, to especially newer property managers or newer property management company owners, right now is such a great time to get into this industry, because we have amazing vendors now who offer, all kinds of technology. We have AI to help you automate your business.
Mm-hmm.
And a business could be incredibly successful just relying on our vendor partners.
Yeah.
And, instead of what I used to do, which was like manual stuff and spreadsheets and relying on hiring people to get things done, there's so much out there we can utilize to run a business.
And I think what's interesting now is that not only is it about, it's about, the technology can help you scale up the people that you have, right? And then, I'll say, like, run more effectively. So you can begin to find specialists within your business, even if your business is like 5 or 6 people. You can build specialties and expertise within those individuals within your organization, mm-hmm. and they can get better, faster, easier, and they can start scaling themselves out, especially when you consider remote professionals, technology, AI, and everything. Every single part of the business can be touched by AI, and I'll include remote professionals. And I think that for those listening, this isn't an either or. Like, when you use AI and remote professionals, you can get exponential results for your time.
100%, and also lower your expense.
And what's funny is that there's actually solutions out there that can lower your expense and improve the resident experience. And it's funny, the reluctance to pursue those kind of alternatives because of being wed to the past. But there's sometimes as a vendor, it's frustrating to see people that are suffering through the, I'll call it the Sunday work, the overwhelming amount of work, the repeated deadlines, all those things, but they're completely unwilling to seek an alternative solution.
Yes, I have spoken with people like that. For myself, it was one of the favorite things I did in my business was mm-hmm. going out and finding what technologies out there, what remote, I wouldn't say all remote professionals, but like a company that provided a service that I could outsource to. Why mm-hmm. did I love doing that? When I look at the technology that's out there, my first question is this going to improve our client's experience? Is this going to improve our residents' experience? And is it going to improve the property manager's experience, right? Is it going to help us become better at communicating with our residents and with our clients? Mm-hmm. Is it going to make our own team's workload better and lighter and mm-hmm. make them work more efficiently and save them time? If the answer is yes, that's already, like, I'm already 90% there. And then because I know that by adding efficiency into your operations, that's where the savings come in, right? Mm-hmm. I might not, I might be spending money on this technology, but I know that in the long run, I'm actually saving a lot of money mm-hmm. on labor, on retention. And then at the same time, if I'm able to improve that resident experience or that owner experience, man, that's like the best thing that could happen to my business. So I love doing that. I love talking with different vendors out there. Like, show me what you got and show me how you can help me in these areas, right?
Well, I think it's especially interesting when you consider, like, just the operational function. Like, mm-hmm. you kind of have, you've got a regional rent floor and ceiling in terms of how much you can sell, how much you can rent for the asset that you've got. So 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom, whatever. And then you can amenitize that a little bit to be able to capture a little more revenue, but it's incremental from a revenue perspective, but the savings that you can create from a cost perspective and a speed perspective are totally exponential. Like, you can, I mean, we talk a ton about automation, but it's like, and people maybe don't feel great about that because it means that people are going to maybe lose their jobs. But ultimately, it's the bad jobs that are getting automated. It's the people that work that people don't want to do. And I'm finding that given that people are so overworked right now, you're not actually like, you're making their lives so much easier.
Yeah.
And then like the technical advances with the residents become so much more satisfied because it's just got like one thing that we always talk about is like, why is work so hard? It doesn't need to be so hard. We can make this easy. It's easy in other ways. Like, and was chatting with someone the other week, last week about Amazon, and they're like, well, you know, Amazon reset everyone's expectations. And I was like, I thought about that. I was driving away from that. I was like, no, they didn't reset everyone's expectations. They just like revealed the expectation that everyone always had. Mm-hmm. And so like that reveal, along with the technology, along with the amount of work that we're doing, and you know, let's say that the situation with the economy, it's people don't realize that they're making a choice when they choose the legacy way of doing things. Like you're choosing hard work for you, your people, and your residents. And it's kind of remarkable that it persists.
It's definitely out there. And I've talked with many, you know, property management business owners, because we always, within NARPM, we mastermind a lot and we share ideas, share what works, what doesn't. And I've never met one owner who have implemented tech and automation for the purpose of letting their people go. Because
no, exactly.
A property management company, we're always growing, especially in this market right now, in this economy. We're growing at a really, really fast pace. And the business owner's goal to implement technology and automation is just like you said, it's to lighten the workload of their team, getting things done faster and easier, and be able to scale without having to go out there and add labor, right? Add the cost of labor.
Because the labor that's out there is also have variable quality to it. So you can find good people and scale good. That makes everyone's life easier.
Yeah, 100%. You know, also with employees, right? I speak with employees who are sometimes resistant to change. So there is something, you know, to know about our industry is like in a typical property management business, most of the team is made up of taskmasters because that's what we do. We're heavily process driven. So people that are working on the process or in the processes, they just go through tasks, right? And usually, typically, your taskmasters are introverts. They're not people, right? They're not like.
Well, they get their energy from. They don't get their energy from the energy. People drain their energy versus give them energy.
Yeah. That's the majority of the people, and then also those type of people, like personalities, they also are resistant to change. So why are many property management company owners why are they struggling with getting change adopted within their organization? It starts with that. It's like it just when most of their office is made up of change resisting, you know, taskmasters. They just don't get it. So as a business owner, it's really, really important for you to get the buy-in of your team. And yeah, you do have to, you know, become a salesperson, you know, to your own team by teaching them how one piece of technology could maybe make them 30% more efficient and save them 30% of time. I always position it like, look, if I brought in this piece of technology this year, it's going to give you 30% of your time back that you can spend on, you know, maybe more time with your kids. If you need a day off, right? An extra day off.
Or acquiring more properties.
Yeah.
Growing, right?
Yeah. You can take that time and give your residents more time, right? More service. You can be on the phone with them a little bit longer without feeling antsy or frustrated because you got time now to do more things. And so you got to sell it to the team first, get the buy-in, and then implement. And then another thing I learned about implementation is implement. You know, when you make that decision to implement something, do it and give it time before you introduce another piece of technology. Because I made the mistake of doing too much. And that really was frustrating to my team.
So then maybe if we could kind of like, we'll pass through your time at Pure. and move through into NARPM, because I think this is a healthy part of the conversation to talk about the advocacy, because I don't want to lose the connection to the technology piece. Because what we just talked about is how technology can make life easier for the resident, make life easier, can create more profitability or efficiency in the businesses. It can make life better for the property manager, maybe even creating more property managers or scaling that business out. So when we get into NARPM and NARPM 2.0 and your new role, like how is, and given like, I mean, it's hard to strip off the computer science background, the time at Pure and driving technology implementation, technology related property management, and then now NARPM. Now NARPM is, for those that it's the largest single family home rental association in the US. It has and then of those 14 million homes that are for rent right now, about how many of those are institutionally managed, professionally managed?
Less than 10%.
Less than 10%. So you get 1.4 million. So the rest of them are all, let's kind of go with that. That's the population status. It's largely fragmented audience of people that you're leading now. So if we talk about those things, how does, so then we talked about how NARPM is out there to educate and to communicate both the public and as well as your constituents. What's the mindset gap that needs to be addressed? We'll start internally with the NARPM people, the NARPM constituents, that where the industry is today and where it needs to go in order to achieve the objectives that the advocacy part is looking to unlock.
Yeah, great question. So I know that internally, right, the NARPM members, if you are a fly on the wall and you're listening to our conversations, we're always talking about how we can improve the resident experience and how we can make the experience better for everyone. We're not in a room talking about how much more money we can make on people, or let's. It's
like people think it's like Scrooge McDuck, like you're swimming.
Yeah, right. We're not like planning on how we're gonna stick it to somebody. It's always about how do we improve that experience. That's the conversations we're having, and so we want to bring that from internal conversation to now a public conversation. So what that looks like is we want to do more public campaigns, right? Story campaigns. So picture this. Maybe you see an ad on social media or even on TV of a single mom coming home from a full day of working, and her ceiling's been leaking for 3 days, right? Starting to grow mold. She's got kids running around. It's not a safe environment. And she's picking up the phone, calling her landlord. Her landlord is not answering. And it's a very frustrating situation to be in. And quite honestly, there are people who are literally living in that right now. And they don't know what to do. They don't know who to turn to. So that's the story we're painting. And what solves that problem is having that property professionally managed, right? A professional property manager, especially who is a NARPM member, we have a high standard of ethics and high standard of professional practice, where we teach property managers, we teach NARPM members the importance of treating a resident right and staying on top of maintenance and staying on top of leases and everything to make sure that they are getting what they pay for.
Right.
And it's as simple as that. It's just getting the public to understand, right? Starting with the residents, starting with the tenants who are looking for homes to rent. Right? Who do you get it from? Do you call somebody off of Craigslist who may or may not get the importance of treating their residents the right way? Or do you rent from a NARPM member who have gone through education and gone through training and are very actively having the conversation of how to make residents' lives better?
I think that just, and one thing to kind of add to that, specifically in before your era starts at NARPM, of all the associations that I've joined in the past, I thought it was very interesting that before I joined NARPM, we had to go through and pass an ethics exam.
Yeah.
Right. And that's as a vendor, and I'd never really witnessed that kind of gateway for that acknowledgement of ethics, or even, it's everything is just like sign up here. Where's your check or your credit card number, right? Like Stripe link. But that was my very first impression. Well, I'd say formal impression with our experience with NARPM. And I thought that this means something different, right? Like to actually have a vendor have to take an ethics and pass the course and pass a test.
Mhm.
That was, it took an investment of time, but it was more than just a flippant, credit card fee. I thought that was very indicative of where you are talking about where everything's going is this standardization. So if I understand correctly, right now there's 14 million rentals in the U.S. 10% are professionally managed, and some of those are in NARPM and not in NARPM, right? Some of those members cross over, and is your vision of the future where there's like a NARPM standard for rental, like a Better Business Bureau kind of like standard that exists so a resident can go rent and confidently understand how their experience is going to generally be?
Yes. I think eventually we would love to have that professional standardization across our industry, because right now, I'll pick on Georgia, for instance, right? In order to be a property manager, all you need to have is a real estate license.
Right.
And we know that when you go through your 75 hours to get your real estate sales license, they cover property management maybe for like 5 minutes.
Right.
Like one section, and that's it. And then they say, okay, now you're qualified to go manage someone's home. That's not enough. So eventually, of course, we would love for anyone who manages properties to have to go through more education, to go through that, right? To become a professional, right? But right now, the first step is to educate the public and for them to understand, hey, if you're an accidental landlord, you're a beginning investor, who do you turn to when you need help managing your property? They need to know first, okay, what's the difference between somebody who's a true professional property manager, who's a NARPM member or a designated member, versus someone who's not. So when they know that difference, they're going to ask for it. When they interview potential property managers, they're going to say, okay, are you a member of NARPM? They're going to say, well, what kind of designations do you have? Do you have a master property manager, certification behind your name, or RMP certification? When the public starts to demand it, I think naturally more and more property managers or people who want to get into this industry are going to want to get their designation and take more classes and join NARPM.
Sure.
Right? So that's the first step. Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be a filter for a better experience, right? Because if you're a resident, you're moving into this home, you're bringing your stuff with you. Especially given the demographic of single family renters, you're probably or maybe raising your early family in that home. And so it's not like you're in a studio apartment in Athens, Georgia, and you can just walk across the street next week, right?
Yeah.
There's a little bit more work to this.
Right. A lot of work. Yes. A lot of work to do it the right way. And then, from an advocacy perspective, if we can jump into that, I'm so glad you brought that up, is there's, legislation changes all the time in the housing industry and single family rentals, right? And so every state is different. And it will, anytime there's like a bill being introduced or a law passed, it drastically changes the way we operate. And, and
your growth potential, right? Like Massachusetts has that new funny law. Like there's all these different funny laws that are coming out there. It feels as though it's an easy villain to objectify.
Yeah, exactly. You're exactly right.
Or to create a villain, I shouldn't say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think regardless of people's political, like which side they lean, right, towards, the truth is the more strict the regulation, the harder it is for people to become real estate investors. And when you restrict the ability of people to become successful investors, then inventory is going to decrease, because who provides inventory, right? It's the investors. It's the, build to rent, maybe institutional side of things. It's your single accidental landlords. Every one of these investors, we put them in the investor bucket, they're contributing towards the inventory.
Mhm.
which we desperately need right now because
Yeah.
prices are higher when supply is less, right?
Mhm.
It's supply and demand, basic economics. So when regulation encourages housing supply providers and make it easier for them to be in this business and be successful in this business, then more people will provide inventory, and
Yeah.
then for with that, rental prices will start to go down. So NARPM,
Well,
um,
and housing will become more affordable.
yeah,
Right.
yes. And so it's, we're always trying to educate our lawmakers on that exact thing,
Mhm.
right? And what we want to do to increase our impact on advocacy is starting with data. So one thing that we're going to focus on with NARPM 2.0 is we want NARPM to start collecting membership data, to start collecting data on our investors, on our
Mhm.
renters, and on the rental market in general. And we want to be the number one source of the most accurate and actual rental market data. There's a ton of companies out there right now who provide us data, right?
Mhm.
But where does their data come from? It comes from a conglomerate of all sorts of data. Like it could be professionally managed data, it could be your self-managed landlord data, which you agree it would look completely different, right?
Yeah.
Like your days on market between a professionally managed property is going to look drastically different from your days on market with a self-managed landlord who
Yeah.
doesn't have access to all the advertising tools. So but when you mix all that data together, it's not the most accurate thing.
Mhm.
And so we want to create our own set of truly accurate data that is based on professionally managed
Mhm.
properties. And then when we have all of the data collected, we can intelligently go to Congress, go to lawmakers, and say, here's what this data is showing us. It's
Mhm.
very difficult to argue against data. And we can't just, show up on the Hill and say, hey, what you're doing is going to negatively impact both the landlord and the residents. But when we go in with, numbers and information, it's going to make their decision making much easier.
Mhm.
The other thing we want to do, starting with next year, is taking a bolder stance on hot topics, hot housing topics. So whenever the media comes out with a hot housing topic, we want to be one of the first to address it and say,
Mhm.
hey, here's NARPM's standpoint on that, and here is how it's going to impact the landlords. Here's how it's going to impact our residents, because we come from a fair perspective, right? We're here representing both sides. So let us tell you how it's going to impact both sides.
Mhm.
And the more we do it, I believe the more media may pay attention to us, and the more lawmakers may pay attention to us. And I would
Well,
love.
it's not just a defensive posture. It's also kind of like an offensive posture in terms of like, hey, here's the things that we're doing, curating sentiment towards, single family property management versus an ownership versus letting someone else dictate the narrative.
Mhm.
And then you're on your heels.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, historically, that's been our position, is like let it more reactive than
Yeah.
offensive, right? So
On the
we
offense. Can't say offensive, but on the
not
offense.
offensive. We don't want to be offensive.
No, I know. On the offense versus yeah.
On the offense, being more proactive.
Yeah.
And I think that's really going to help with our position, in at least having our voice heard, because we do
Mhm.
represent both sides,
Mhm.
and we need to lead that conversation, just like you said, instead of letting someone else lead that conversation who doesn't live and breathe what we live and breathe daily.
Yeah. And do you find, like, with respect to the membership of not, I'll say property managers, but like why do they face, what's the kind of like threat to their existence that is going to drive this unification?
For property managers, like, why would they want?
For owners, let's say for owners, because if we want to solve the housing crisis,
Mhm.
we need to create lanes that make it easy for people to create profitable businesses. Otherwise, it's not going to happen.
Correct.
And those lanes are being blocked by opinion, emotion, sensationalism, right? So how can we create those lanes and then make those lanes attractive for the members or those that are owners or managers? What I'm getting at is that if we don't do this, what happens?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If we don't do this, then more and more legislative control will happen because, unfortunately, the lawmakers they listen to our media too, right? They listen to horror stories. They're people after all, and they only have so much time in their day to have to learn hundreds and hundreds of bills out there across thousands of industries. It all starts with us educating them, because if they don't hear the information that we have to present, they're just going to believe what they hear out there in the media or whoever is crying the loudest.
Right.
And who's crying the loudest are the residents who have been impacted negatively.
Yep.
Because somebody, unfortunately, maybe a landlord or an uneducated, not professional property manager did them wrong. And there are cases out there, unfortunately, right? So
we're seeing that in affordable right now. Like there's residents that are organizing and unionizing against their landlords because they unfortunately don't have an option to move as much as others do.
Yeah.
And maintenance has drifted and inspections have drifted. And so they're actively organizing, which is, that's the worst case scenario.
That's the worst case scenario. And they've got attorneys who jump all over that wagon.
Yeah.
For the sake of profitability and not for the sake of improving this space, right? So they're out there representing these residents, not to solve the problem, but to really poke the bear and make the problem worse. And so, it really, for me, the most impactful thing we can do is educating the lawmakers, is showing up and telling them why, don't blame landlords for some of these problems. Blame the lack of education, right? Blame the lack of standardization and professionalism. So that's really, really what the lawmakers should promote.
Right. Because the lack of standardization, look at all the other things that we consume in this world, right? Be it you consume transportation, you consume cars, you consume food, like all of it has a standard of rigor that is upheld by an organization. And ideally, this is a industry-run organization and not a government-run organization, so that you can have some, and if we don't get a hold ahead of that, we're not going to be doing it. It's going to be done to us.
Yeah, it will become a government controlled industry. I mean, if we allow it too much, and then, all of us will be scared to operate in this space. Investor will be scared to buy a rental property. They'll start to exit. And then when that happens, there will be less housing. And then all of a sudden people are going to wonder why rental prices are so high.
Right.
So
Ultimately,
that's the road that we're going to go down if we don't advocate.
Because the core business of acquiring an asset, making it rent ready, you're doing the improvements, renting it and capturing it, that still does not create a ton of margin. There's leverageable margin there, but on a pure P&L basis, it's only I think I saw 7.5% is the rental yield right now. And so 7.5%, that's around there. So what's that?
That's a good yield.
It's a good yield.
Yeah.
And so if we can get those numbers, if we don't do that, we're just going to take away from that yield, which is going to eliminate the people that the capital is just going to go somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's competition out there, right, where investors could potentially put their money. Yeah,
and nothing against self-storage, I'm just using it as an example, but that money could go chase self-storage, and that's not going to create that's not going to solve the housing problem.
Yeah, 100%. You nailed it.
When we take a look at the desire not to professionalize. So, again, taking a contrarian approach to humans that don't want to change, as we described earlier, this is an audience that doesn't necessarily desire change. You're talking about the vision of the future and the things that need to happen. What kind of objections are you getting with respect to professionalization? Or do you anticipate? I should say anticipate, or are you hearing?
I think our biggest challenge with standardizing professionalism is, when is the authoritative figures or organizations that are kind of holding, like the real estate commissions, right? Your local, like every state has their own, and then some states don't have any licensing requirements. I think the biggest challenge is to standardize across the country. It's got to start locally, and then for the state to adopt it, and then once one state, two states adopt it, then maybe other states will look into it. So it's a movement that we can't just start from like a national level. That's not going to work. We have to start from that local and state level, and that takes time. It takes like a person, right? People, staff members to go in and then educate and have them understand the importance of professional standardization. So that's the challenge right there is like the speed at which we can do this.
So let's kind of like look out in your tenure. How long is your tenure?
1 year.
1 year. Okay. Let's look out 2 years. So the work that you're going to do starting Jan 1 and then the year after that, kind of like the echo of your effect, right? Yeah. Where do you see? So let's kind of like let's choose the three lenses. So the resident, the owner, and then the public, right? So those three lenses. Where do you, in 2 years' time, what's proof of your success during your tenure?
So proof of success would be the public would actually know, right, NARPM. They would know the importance of at least the difference between a professional property manager with a designation versus somebody who's not. We want the public to start asking for it. So that's going to drive an increase in membership in NARPM. So we're going to measure our success by increase in membership. And with the collection of data, availability of data, the first people to benefit from this data, the information, are our own members. The data will be, free and available to all of our members. They can use the data to compare with the rest of the housing, with the rest of the, management industry, to see where they are. Like, is their business doing well? Do they need to improve on their retention rate? Do they need to improve on their, work order completion date, completion time frame? So that's going to help our members be more successful, and our retention will go up. So it will reflect directly with our membership numbers. First and foremost. And secondly, for us to have more opportunities to speak in publicly with media, for lawmakers to actually contact us and ask us for our opinions before they even consider proposing a bill. That to me would be a success at the end of 2 years.
So lawmakers are seeking your input before they, if they're actively articulating the problem they're seeking to solve, and they're actually asking for your input before they kind of reveal it into the conversation.
Yeah, and then the media, before they release a news story, about a hot housing topic, to come to NARPM,
right,
to get our stance on it and to report that. And I think that will eventually, years down the road, lead to that. We are now improving the conversation in this space. Now we're talking about how something is going to help or hurt both sides, right? And then eventually, like, when people start to see the other side and understand what the other side's going through, that's how we can unify the sides. Going back to that original challenge that we talk about. And so members working together.
Yeah, so members are going to feel the benefit of being a NARPM member, because they're going to get business-related data that's going to help them operate more profitably with less amount of work, all those things. They're going to the public / media is going to see NARPM as a point of reference, a perspective, a trusted advisor on the industry, on the concept of conversation of housing, especially single family. And then residents. In 2 years, what's a resident consider when they're looking at an NARPM logo?
Yes. So we want residents to also, know that when they rent from a NARPM member, right, property management company that's a NARPM member, and especially if the property manager has a designation, they know that they're going to live in a nice house.
Yeah.
Or, and that house will be, the maintenance will be taken care of. They don't have to, suffer that leaky roof for days or weeks. Their AC is actually going to, get fixed in the summertime. So, and then when the resident starts demanding that kind of inventory, right? That kind of housing, I think it's going like all of these, the demand, it starts with the public, right? Demanding more professionalism, better managed homes.
Yep.
When we start to demand this, that's when our industry will start to change and shift. And it'll be easier to achieve that professional standard.
Yeah, because it'll be differentiated, as you mentioned in the public conversation. The public will know the difference.
100%.
Love it. Okay. So kind of winding things up here, two more questions. You look back in your career and your life, and maybe even folks that you're talking to today, or maybe even a younger DD, what's one piece of advice you'd give yourself to anchor on as you kind of like look back on your career and what you've accomplished so far, and what's up next?
Yeah. I think, my answer wouldn't surprise you or the audience is I survived in this industry for 2 years before I found NARPM. I started my company in 2010. I found NARPM in 2012. And if I were to, go back and talk to my younger self, I would say before you jump into a business, go get educated, go find an organization full of people who understand what you go through. And this organization actually will provide you solutions and answers and amazing vendors and technology that would help you with your business before you crash and burn. And so that's the exact advice I would give myself and I would give to everybody else.
Make it easy on yourself.
Yeah. The answer is already there.
Make it easier there. Yeah. The answer is already there. Who should we have on next? Who should we have on the show next to talk about this? Keep the conversation going.
Oh man. If you want to continue to talk about the future of NARPM, the president-elect after me is Angela Holman out of Colorado.
Okay.
So, she's going to continue to build on our vision, keep NARPM 2.0 alive. And yeah, Tracy Strike is our incoming treasurer. He's out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. He would be great, interesting to talk with as well.
Wonderful. That's thank you for the offers, for the introductions to the names. Those would be great folks to talk to. Well, everyone, I hope you had a chance to enjoy some of the feedback and lessons today. Love the direction where things are going, and appreciate the conversation around education and information, and just like, I think owning the message, right? Owning our message, rather than let someone else own our message, is something that's really exciting to look forward to in 2026, particularly when you consider just the crisis that we're in from a housing perspective. And it can be inflammatory. It is a bit reactive right now. How can we begin to kind of like focus on the fundamentals, like you said, the data, and how can we let the data tell the story about what's happening here? And how can we begin to take NARPM and make it a more representative representative of what's good, and be able to tell that good story over and over and over again, so that there is a difference between, the unprofessional versus professional. I'll put it that way, so that, leave that for distinguish. I for people to understand. So this has been a really helpful conversation. I hope everyone enjoyed it. And again, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple, leave comments or hit subscribe, and we'll get notified through that. Listen to this on LinkedIn afterwards. Obviously, connect with DD and myself. Lots of conversations to have on there, and any comments you put on there, we'll both get notified, and we'll be able to respond to that. And Dee Dee, wonderful. Thank you for your time today. I really appreciate you setting aside the time, and congratulations on the next year. Congratulations on your kind of like your canonization at, in Orlando. I think that's it's really an exciting time for this business, especially given all the opportunity that's out there. I think that we're really in a good position given the age of this industry and the amount of problems we can solve for everybody we talked about as a stakeholder.
Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity to have this conversation with you. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, awesome. All right. Well, everyone have a great rest of your day today. And yeah, take care and look forward to the next things. Take care. Bye, everyone.